Dad, what's the future gonna look like?
I'm Joe Liemandt, and I am principal at Alpha School, which is a network of schools where we are transforming education. But before I get into what we're doing at Alpha, I'm going to take my principal prerogative. I'm going to give you guys a pop quiz. So think about this. What is the greatest untapped resource on the planet? Think about that for a second. Of what resource do you think it is? And I'm not going to take too long and call you out, but it actually isn't nuclear energy, and it isn't solar energy. The greatest untapped resource on planet Earth is human potential. The most important thing that a society does is raise the next generation, right? Their job, both families and at the society level, is to untap, right? Unleash the potential of every kid on this planet. And if you think about the future that he was talking about earlier, our future, when you think forward 10 and 20 years from now, is going to be a radically different world than today or the one we grew up in. And the educational system that we all experienced, right, that it's been the same for the last 100 or 200 years, is not going to serve us. We need to rebuild it, and we need to rebuild it from the ground up. And that's actually what we're doing at Alpha. So 3 years ago, when I became a principal, we sat down and said, first principles, right? What are the core things? If we have to take and build an education of the future, what are the elements we really care about? And the first one, and the most important, is that kids must love school. If we're going to subject them to a dozen plus years of this, of their life, we cannot make it this terrible experience. They must love it. And they actually must love it at a standard of more than vacation. So at Alpha, we survey our kids every 8 weeks. And 90% of kids say, I love school. 40 to 60% of the kids say, I'd rather go to school than go on vacation. It depends on the vacation or their workshop. The highlight of my 3 years as principal was a few months ago. 2/3 of the high school students sent me a note and said, can we keep the school open this summer? Because we don't want to take summer break. And I don't know your experience, but that was not my high school experience. And so the first part, we have to just, if we're rebuilding it, make it a great place for everybody. Second, we have to educate kids 10 times faster. We cannot put kids in class for 6 hours a day plus homework to learn what we learned as Common Core, sort of the standard learning. And so at Alpha, what we did is, and the good news about that is, for the last 40 years, the schools of education, Harvard, Stanford, all over, have been doing research into learning science, the science of how kids develop and learn. And we've known for 40 plus years how kids could learn 2, 5, 10 times faster. It just doesn't work in a teacher in front of a classroom model. So at Alpha, we took AI, an AI tutor, we embodied it with all these learning science concepts, and our students learn 10 times faster. So when you go into an Alpha school, you spend 2 hours with this AI tutor, but during that 2 hours, you learn more than twice as much as kids who sit in class for 6 and do homework. We are the top performing academic school in the country, right? Top 1% on every dimension. And we do it in only 2 hours a day. And the key and why 2 hours really matters is because it allows us to give kids their time back, right? Which is the most powerful motivator in the world for a kid. And so what we use those 4 hours is to teach life skills, all the skills that we think are really important to succeed in the real world, right? It's project-based workshops in the afternoon, and there are adults and kids in these workshops. But you should think about the skills. What are the skills that matter in this AI future? You still want to know leadership and teamwork, entrepreneurship and financial literacy, storytelling and public speaking, relationship building, socialization, grit, hard work. All of those life skills that we think actually are going to be important, because what we learned in sort of the book learning of Common Core is going to become less important as we move to the future. And so all of those skills that you look at is what can be done. And sort of the message to here, and so what does it mean for all of you? And what's my ask here? Well, when you realize sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, everybody on the planet is gonna have a tablet. Every kid's gonna have a tablet. The tablet's gonna be less than $1,000. And it's gonna teach them everything they need to know in 2 hours. And that's gonna force every family and every society to say, how do we wanna raise our kids? What are the skills we wanna develop? How should they spend their day? Because there's no world where we're gonna put them in class for 6 hours in homework like we all experienced. And so that's the part as we look at that you wanna do, is when kids have these afternoons, right, these hours to do things, they do amazing things, right? Their potential is unleashed. I have 5th graders who manage an Airbnb, 6th graders who launched a food truck. Our middle schoolers last year raised money and traveled to Poland and Ukraine to teach 1,000 Ukrainian refugees who didn't have schools and teachers how to use this learning engine so they could learn like they were in a school in Austin, Texas, right? Our middle schoolers are spending their time, they're actually launching the first all-teen Broadway musical, right? They sourced all the songs and singers off TikTok, right? Their first week, over 1 million streams, right? That the skills and capabilities that kids have, that if we actually say, let's not waste their 12 years, is unbelievable. And so for you guys out here, there's very few people who are in this audience who go into education, right? 3 years ago, I left my career, right, and said, I need to go and figure out what it's like. I had to go be a principal. I just see what happens when 5th graders get in fights and what do parents yell at you about. We had to build great products, right? Products that can totally transform this. And that's my call here, which is, when I looked at it 3 years ago, was let's go work on what is humanity's greatest problem, right? Which is, how are we gonna educate the next generation and get them ready for this world that's coming? And for all of you builders, right, we need people to come who haven't been in education. We need entrepreneurs, right? It is gonna take your skills and your capabilities if we're gonna transform education. It's also gonna take finance. We are going to have, capitalism is going to have to bring capital to fix education. It's a $7 trillion industry, right? The $1 billion that I threw in is a drop in the bucket. It's gonna take hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild this, to get this out to 1 billion kids, to transform what is the future of humanity. And so when you're looking at things and you think of this future, you know, for adults, some of this AI future is gonna be a mixed bag, some wins, some losses, right? I'm in Austin, Texas. We got a lot of self-driving cars there. We got all of them. We got the Waymos and the robo-taxis, right? We got the Zooks. It's not a good time to be an Uber driver, right? You're gonna be doing something else. But when you think of how AI can impact our kids, it's an unequivocal good, It gives kids superpowers. It allows us to rebuild their first 12 years to make it awesome, right? To completely transform so that they don't have to go through the experience that so many of us did. Those charts that you saw where scores are going down, right? Dissatisfaction going up, disengagement at all times high. That's not required. We can fix all those problems. And so my call here is, come join me and make sure and ensure that this is the best time in history to be a 5-year-old. Thank you.
The future is gonna be awesome.